From Mothman and Nessie to the spirit that haunts your home, welcome to Bob After Dark, a podcast about legends, lore, and the supernatural. So turn your lights down and your volume up and enjoy your trip to the shadows.
Oh, hey there, children of the night. Welcome to Bob After Dark, the show that takes you into the shadows and goes and says hello, everything that goes bump in a night. I'm your host with the most that enjoys toast, Bob, and alongside of me, as always, is my ever wonderful, ever vampiric, ever cape-wearing, my friend, my brother, my producer, and the heartthrob of Bob After Dark, Count Panic himself. Oh, hey there, Count Panic.
Oh, hey, Bob, yes. Back. Another episode of Bob After Dark.
Yes, it's good to be back. How are you doing, Count? Let me get a weekend update from you because we didn't see each other last week.
Doing good, Bob. Of course, as we're filming this, coming off some major storms here.
Past 2 weeks.
Yeah, you're right. The past couple weeks. Yesterday, we had those tornado warnings going off like crazy, the sirens and whatnot.
Yes.
And I know it ripped through Illinois and Indiana. Wide range of storms. A tornado possibly touched down near Crown Point there. It seems like it was confirmed today.
Man,
and a whole lot of trees down.
I drove through East Chicago, Hammond, and Griffith, Munster today, right? And every place had down limbs. It was a disaster, man. And then last week, the reason why we weren't here is because we got record falling rain here in Northwest Indiana.
Flooding,
5 inches of rain.
Yeah, Bob. And if you're still sitting at home without power, maybe you got your little transistor radio.
Got to turn that crank.
We don't have any NIPSCO updates for you. But
no, we're a paranormal show, guys.
But we do have ghost stories, I guess.
We certainly do. And joining us for the part 2 of the show, my brother, pro wrestling superstar and paranormal enthusiast, Steve Micheals is here.
Oh, hey there, Bob.
Now, Steve,
yes,
for the first time in Bob After Dark history, you are more prepared than I am.
Yeah.
You have a laptop, I don't, because the studio's laptop is missing. So I'm using this here pretend prop laptop so you guys aren't looking at me on my phone the entire show.
I just assumed that you became a DJ.
Yes. Wiggle, wiggle, doop, scratch.
It's the only time you get to touch the knobs and Panic not yell at you.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want.
Normally, I'd be asking you for a long update, but I literally just saw you our last episode. So
we did.
And I saw you Saturday.
You saw me Saturday?
I saw you Saturday, so I guess, I don't know, what's been going on with you?
Not much. We, like everyone here, we dealt with some storms coming through.
Yes.
And that was rough. Thankfully, everyone and everything's okay by me, so... can't complain, Bob.
That's good. I'm glad to hear we're all safe, sound, and here. Yeah. And to our folks at home that are listening via radio because, power outage or whatever, hang in there, guys. I saw NIPSCO trucks out all day today, with a little bit that I was out, I should say, and they're working hard to get you guys some power restored.
Those Dunkin' Donut lines were massive.
Were they really? Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. All NIPSCO trucks.
It's that union break. Anyway, folks, if this is your first time ever watching or listening to Bob After Dark, we are your weekly paranormal show where we talk about legends, lore, and the supernatural, things that go bump in the night, lights in the sky, weird cryptid stories, and, of course, Count Panic's favorite popsicle flavor for the summertime.
Oh, man. Ooh. So are we talking about, from the ice cream guy in the cart, the Paletta man, or the truck?
Truck guy, whatever. What was your go-to popsicle as a kid? It could have been a character.
Well, I like the teenage. If we're going off of that, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle.
That was a lime one, right?
Yeah, that was a pretty good one.
And then they had the gumballs for the eyes, right?
Yeah. Also, there was like Sonic the Hedgehog one.
That was going to be my answer.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll take
the
turtle then.
That's fine. The turtle. What about you?
I'm a classic bomb pop man.
Oh man, do you ever Liquid IV? By the way, if you're listening, I drink your product religiously. Sponsor me. Do you drink Liquid IV?
I don't.
It's the hydration package.
Oh, I drink Prime.
Oh, okay. Jake Paul, how you doing? Is that Logan or Jake?
It's Logan.
Okay, Logan. There, whatever. Yeah. I don't know. No, but the hydration packs. They did a collaboration with the Popsicle brand to do a bomb pop flavored. I had it for my first time a couple weeks ago, and when I tell you that the powder, when you mix it in with your water, which I only do like a fourth of a pack, it hit every flavor of the bomb pop in a row as if you were licking it. And it was so weird because it wasn't like lime, cherry, blue, raspberry all at once. It came staggered. Like as
That's
if
crazy.
I was like, what is this wizardry? I'm trying.
That's magic. That's real magic.
My answer was always the Sonic the Hedgehog. Not that I was a Sega kid growing up. I was a Nintendo kid. But they didn't have Mario popsicles in the truck. It was always the janky-looking Sonic with, like, the weird-looking gumball
The
eyeball.
weird Spider-Man.
Yes. Oh, my word. That is taking me back. Or the Superman. You got the logo that melted.
Did you ever try the old WWF ice cream bars?
Yes, I have, actually. Yeah, I remember
They were
those
good.
from when I was a kid.
Those were
They
good.
came back later on.
They
right?
did. I remember
They did.
CM Punk was giving those out. Count, you get one when you saw him?
I didn't know they were. Well, actually, yeah. On the way out, they gave me a free one. I couldn't get one of those T-shirts that were pretty cool, but I did get the ice cream. How about the Bob Pop? The Bob Pop.
It would be grape, I would assume, because the colors are purple for the show. It would be much like when the Displays Ghostbusters did the Bob After Dark Martini, which was purple and it's smoked. Hindsight, we probably shouldn't have drank it, but we did, and I'm alive. I'm just missing an organ, and I'm about to... Oh, by the way, there's an update about that. I'll get to you guys. I'm missing an organ, and I'm about to get an organ removed again. So I guess, I don't know, all this time later, the Displays Ghostbusters Bob After Dark Martini didn't kill me.
Probably shouldn't have had that drink.
It worked. So the Bob After Dark popsicle would be purple, maybe with like some sort of goo inside, like an ectoplasm goo. Because they used to have the Slimer pops. Yes,
yeah.
If you remember those, you would lick them and they would have the
It would
ooze
have
in the
like
middle.
the green.
So it'd be the
slime.
same thing for the Bob After Dark bar. It'd be
And
purple.
that was like a sour apple.
Yeah,
wasn't
this
it?
would be grape with like, maybe it'd be like a sour something in the middle, but it would definitely be like ectoplasm.
I'd give it a try.
Now, before we start the show, I think we have some explaining to do to Count Panic. Because he was very confused about what we were doing.
Yes.
Okay, so this is a fast story and we'll move on. So, Count, before we started the show, you came in the studio and you were really confused.
I was confused.
Because Steve and I had bags of Ghostbuster patches.
It was like there was some shady activity going on around here. You guys seemed like you were orchestrating a trade-off.
We did. So, some of us in the Ghostbusters community collect patches, and what the patches are usually, they represent a franchise from some team across America. Like we're part of Windy City, we have our patch, and then let's say Circle City in Indianapolis, they have their design patch. Some people that like to do this sort of a thing collect and swap patches. And I was just going through my collection because I'm moving into my new studio soon to recoup from surgery because I'll be out of here for a while and we still need to do the show. So I'm prepping to move into the new studio and I'm like, okay, well, I've been sitting on all these patches for a couple of years. I need to mount some of them. Well, going through it, I realized I had doubles of a bunch of stuff, and I'm like, I'll be seeing Steve tomorrow. Let me do some trades. And you are looking for the rarest Ghostbusters patch in existence currently that I have in my possession. But we still ended up doing 2 trades, which was pretty rad.
It was pretty good.
Yep.
I'm great. I'm happy with what we did.
Yeah, but so that's what it was. Because Count Panic's like, what are you guys doing? We were trading
I was going to say, this was a big activity. That at some point you wanted to trade Steve for his championship belt. It was a big
thing.
hoopla.
Now, this is a side thing, which actually will kind of correlate with one of the news stories tonight. You are the 3rd biggest Star Wars patch collector in the world?
At one point, I had the 3rd largest Star Wars patch collection in the world.
That's insane.
Behind a guy up in Wisconsin and a guy in California.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
We don't have anything like that in the Ghostbusters community that says that. I would say I would have at least top 5 biggest collections.
Let me put it this way. I haven't actively collected in about 5 years, and I'm still in the top 10.
That's impressive, Steve. Yeah. All right, now I can call you a nerd and we can move on. Bob After Dark is your weekly paranormal show. We talk about the spooky stuff, and we divide the show up into 2 parts. The first part of the show is where I get the weird, spooky news of the week. That's where you, the fans, and me, the Bob, go scouring the internet for the weird and unusual news, anything from ghost sightings, cryptid encounters, lights in the sky pictures that are too blurry to make out, or weird advances that borderline on science fiction. And later in the show, we dive into what I call the meat and potatoes of the episode. You guys could eat the meat, and I'll have the potatoes. The lore of the week. And this week, we're actually doing a part 2, which is why you're here.
Yeah, it is. Exactly
we are back to back. You're here 2 weeks in a row. Whereas because we didn't have a show last week because of the rain.
True, yeah.
But you're here back to back, and we have a part 2 that doesn't relate to the first story at all, except the name.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy how that worked, but I wouldn't miss it.
No, that's good. Well, I kind of told you to come, and you were here. So, first news article is one that I found myself, and this is printed in the Lad Bible, and it's written by Joe Harker.
Can I just stop, because I'm offended.
You're offended.
That you didn't ask me if I brought a news article.
Did you bring a news article?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
Okay,
See,
maybe I'll scratch my weird pop culture story then that I thought.
No, you just naturally assume, Steve's going to come in and it's just going to be a whole bunch of yucks. And
yeah, I'm just going to have the Wikipedia article up for the lore of the week. I'm going to read from that, and we're going to have some takes on it. And
yeah, no.
You brought a news article.
I brought a news article.
Do you want to go first?
No.
Okay, let's go back.
No, we'll save the best for last.
I'll have you go second then. All right. So the Excalibur sword that's been wedged into a rock for 1,300 years suddenly just disappears. This is written by Joe Harker. Sacre bleu. Do you like that? That's how the article starts. Sacre bleu. Did I do good? You've been to France. I never have. Did I do good?
Très bien.
What?
Yes, you did well.
Okay, thank you. Do you speak French like fluently or semi-fluently?
My mother was a French major.
I had no idea.
So I've
So does that mean you speak it fluently or
not fluently?
But you know enough.
I know enough.
That's fair. Someone has stolen France's historic sword, which has been in a stone supposedly for 1,300 years. Over in the UK, they got a story of King Arthur and the sword in the stone, while France could until recently go and visit an actual sword in the stone. The missing blade's name is Durandal, and it has belonged to the French knight from days of Claramange. Help me out here, Steve.
I don't have
Charlemange.
Charlemagne.
Oh, Charlemagne. Charlemagne, known as Ronald, who was a legendary figure in French history. The real Ronald ruled over France and then border with Brittany, the stuck-out bit of northwest France in modern day, and died in battle in 778, with his last sword becoming the stuff of legend. According to the legend, the sword was indestructible and capable of cutting through stone, and when Ronald was near death, he tried to destroy it by hacking it against a rock. Since the blade did not break, he either hid it beneath his body as he succumbed to the wounds, or he hurled it 100 miles away where it was buried into the side of a cliff. In real life, there was a sword buried in a cliff in the face of the France town of Rocamadour. The local tourist board says that it's a replica of the original sword, but the blade, which is buried and chained in the stone more than 30 feet off the ground, could have been the real thing. If it has been there for 1,300 years and then supposedly disappearance is a shock to the system. Sadly, the sword in the stone has indeed gone missing, and it is feared that theft is the reason why it's no longer there. The area's mayor, Dominique L'Enfant, told local media, "We are going to miss that sword. It has been a part of our area for centuries, and there's not a guide who doesn't point it out when he visits. The area feels robbed of a part of itself, but even its legend, the destinies of this village and the sword are intertwined. The sword was so precious to the area that when it was taken to be exhibited to a museum for the first time, a counselor and security guard accompanied the blade back home. An investigation into the whereabouts of the sword has begun, though we fear the next few days of some surprise victor in France's elections who was bearing an ancient sword, then we'll know who took it. #PanicStake.
Yeah, so it's just kind of mystery of missing a sword here, I take it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool, you
Yeah.
know, sword in the stone story. Have you been to France? Have you ever been to this area and saw the sword in the side of a cliff?
I have not been to that area of France.
Okay.
But I think this means we've got a new king of France. So congratulations to the new king.
I don't think they're just going to let some dude pull the sword. There's not
Look,
like
man,
an ancient legend.
I don't make the rules here.
I don't think it's an Arthurian legend where it's like, oh, you pull the sword from the stone and then you become king. It sounds like this dude didn't want anybody else to get the sword, so he just kind of hurled it into the side of a rock.
Yeah, I mean,
it sounds like whoever gets
a new king. That's all I'm saying.
Does the France doesn't even have a monarchy anymore, do they?
They do now. They do now, brother.
I was going to say, didn't they? The monarchy in France kind of ended.
Well,
they
have a president now, but you know, look, presidential election, man that shows up with a 1,300-year-old sword. I know which I'm
that
going
slices
for.
through rock.
Yeah, I'm going with the sword guy.
We're not one to get political, but I think the United States can learn a lesson from that. Politicians, guy with 1,300-year-old sword that cuts through rock. I'm going to go with the guy with the sword that cuts through rock. And that was able to be flung over like 100 feet into the side of a cliff.
No debates needed. Just why should you be in charge? I pulled this out of the rock. It's 1,300 years old.
Yeah, hey, we got to do it. When was the last time
king.
the United States had a king? Oh,
Never.
now you do. Enjoy the monarchy.
All hail our first king.
Are you the one who pulled the sword from the stone and you're coming here to become king of America?
Let's just move on, Bob.
That's fair. Would you like to tell your news story now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Let me just
Because boy howdy, my next story is a little dumb, and I might just scratch it because.
now I gotta go. Now we gotta go with your story.
Do you want me to actually do it?
Yeah. No. Absolutely. Let's do.
So
yours.
this has something to do with your Star Wars patch collection.
Okay.
Hasbro unveils spooky new Star Wars Halloween 2-pack figure set.
I did see this. Yeah. Wow. We were bottom of the barrel this week, weren't we?
Yes. Hasbro reveals a spooky Star Wars Black Series Halloween 2-pack for the fall of 2024. The set includes Halloween-themed Cad Bane and a vampiric Grand Inquisitor. Spooky pets added like a ghoul Babu Frick and a vampiric Minok. Figures feature premium design, articulation, and special edition packaging. And yes, this is only happening in July, but Hasbro wants to make money by cashing in on that sweet Halloween deal. And this is the first time Star Wars has ever gone spooky for toys in this regard, because it's like a Halloween variant, and people are not happy about it. Hashtag, I'll go with your take, starting.
Well, we've come a long way since Johnny Appleseed, haven't we?
I have hundreds of stories I can cover. Most of them are about death and destruction. I have plenty. And a lot of them are about, like, sad mutilations or, like, hauntings. And I'm like, here's a spooky toy
Star
story.
Wars figures.
I told you it was not.
And I also want to point out, it's not the first spooky Star Wars figure ever released.
That was but directly labeled as a Halloween variant?
Yeah, 100%.
Then this bleeding cool lied to me.
Yeah, they did, because Disney yearly releases R2s that are seasonal, including Halloween R2s.
I don't think they mean it like that.
No. I'll send pictures because I've got a bunch.
Yeah, but you have to go to the park and get those, right?
It's available online as well.
I think they mean it
This
like
is available online.
Yeah, but I mean, like, this sounds like it's like the first widely populated toy.
We're splitting hairs here now, Bob.
Can I just tell a story? Can I get your take?
Yeah, well, the Star Wars, you named a couple of those characters there, Bob. I'm not too familiar. Who were those characters you named?
Cad Bane and a Grand Inquisitor.
Are they like Jar Jar Binks?
No. In fact, every Star Wars fan of the show just turned us off for the final time.
I love Jar Jar.
There you go.
They will never come back now.
That's not a work.
I mean, this is neat for the fans, of course, of Star Wars. And I'm a fan of Star Wars. I just don't know. I know they go deep into the legacy of it all. I know the core characters. But what a great time to be alive if you're a fan of one, Star Wars, and two, Star Wars-related Halloween items.
Look, man, Vix is a big fan of both Star Wars and Halloween. I saw this story, and I'm like, she'll appreciate it. It's spooky news, Steve.
I didn't say anything.
Okay, you're looking at me like I'm crazy.
I would never, Bob.
Do you want to tell your story now?
Yeah, because I think we need a palate cleanser from that.
You had something to add to it, so it couldn't have been that bad.
I did.
Okay,
no,
go.
Okay.
Do your
All
thing.
right.
Go.
All right.
I'm waiting for you.
Do my thing.
Do your thing.
Will
Do
you
the
let me
story.
talk? Are you finished?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, buddy.
I'm not your buddy, pal.
I'm not your pal, friend.
Go. Get on with your story. We have a whole.
The story is from Fox News.
Oh, then we're already off to a good start.
Disc. This is from. This was from the 1st. July 1st. Disc-shaped craft hovers over Colorado concert venue. Employees said, quote, it knew it was being watched. A dozen employees said they watched a quote-unquote large disc-shaped craft hover above a Colorado concert venue, then vanish. Quote, what's even crazier is that as soon as we all started noticing it and stopped what we were doing to pay attention to it, the craft tipped at an angle and slowly started moving belly first to the east. An employee reported to the National UFO Reporting Center about the June 5th sighting at the Red Rock Amphitheater in Morrison, Colorado. Then it started fading away until it was invisible. It didn't shoot off into the distance. It simply dissolved into the ether. We all watched it vanish.
That's pretty eerie.
Yeah. The silent hovering object was long, about the size of a 3-story office building, with 3 levels of windows and lights, according to the National UFO Reporting Center. Mm-hmm. One of our coworkers suddenly said to us, "Hey, what is that over there? It looks like a spaceship," the anonymous reporting employee wrote. We all turned to look in the direction he was pointing, and sure enough, there was a UFO hovering about half a mile to a mile north of Red Rocks. They all turned their attention to the strange object in the sky, and it suddenly, quote, faded into nothing as soon as it knew it was being watched, unquote, according to the National UFO Reporting Center post. A dozen of us saw it. We all kept asking each other, "Are you seeing this too?" It was a resounding yes from everyone in the group, the worker wrote. This was not a plane. It wasn't a satellite, a drone, or anything like that. There was no mistaking what it was. Which is kind of fascinating, really.
This was at the new Denver amphitheater outside, right? The one that's carved in the rocks?
Yeah, it's the Red Rock Amphitheater.
Yeah, I haven't been there yet for a show, but I'm curious who was playing the night that it showed up.
Right.
Does it say that in the article who was playing?
It does not.
I had a whole quip ready to go in case they wanted to go see a concert, which I've heard are really magical at that place.
But what this does, the article goes on to note that the way it appeared to simply dissolve is similar to the potential alien encounter that was reported last April in Vegas,
which we covered from above the nightclub.
Which no.
Oh,
this was people reported encountering actual physical creatures that then dissolved, that just kind of disappeared in front of them.
How did I miss that story? I thought you were referring to the nightclub.
There's pictures here which show 2 distinct FLIR objects behind them.
Huh. Sorry, guys, I must have missed reporting on that one.
So it's kind of fascinating in the fact that there's some similarities there.
Yep.
And that multiple people at Red Rock saw this.
Yeah.
We haven't really talked a lot about, or you don't usually hear a lot about UFOs just kind of disappearing. We're used to hearing them shoot off and whatever.
Sure, I know one of the theories on that is a cloaking capability, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so this might have been them witnessing an alien craft actually turning on its cloaking device,
yeah,
and then just disappearing.
That's, first off, I don't know how I missed the figure story last year. I thought you were talking about the nightclub one in Vegas.
Yeah, no, this is a different one.
Okay. That's bold, especially if there was a concert going on, because that's one of the most popular places to see a show in America now is that amphitheater. And if there was an actual show going on, there's a ton of people there. That's brave of that thing to show up.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating that these kinds of things are being reported and by mainstream sources now too. What
was interesting about that article, it says from the employee that it almost knew that it was being watched, then it disappeared, as if it was like, joking aside, it was there to watch a concert, then it was spotted, and it's like, oh, time to cloak.
Right. Yeah, it was there observing.
Yeah.
I mean, we could speculate that based on these descriptions that it sounds like it was observing, realized that it was noticed by multiple people who were probably looking and pointing and staring, and then it was like, nope, can't do this, and then it just...
That's wild.
Yeah, just disappeared.
Hashtag panic steak.
You know what? It sounds like a beautiful venue to see a concert, but even now more so to visit to take in the paranormal experiences. I'm guessing Fish was playing the night of this whole experience.
Scott's a big Fish fan.
I think they play there a lot, don't they? So,
I think a lot of jam bands do. I know
yeah.
you're a big fan of Fish.
Who is that? Daniel Tesh?
I only know you're the only person I know that listens to that.
No, I know, but I'm thinking
the Fish Army is totally never listening to me again.
Another guy that performs at Red Rocks a lot, though. But yeah, Steve, hey, it sounds like it's worth a trip now.
I would say so. And the fact that it went to Denver-ish area of all places, too, like I said, it was there for a reason. Most of these UFO things don't happen out of happenstance.
Right.
The more we move on since the congressional hearing last year, the further we move on, the more and more apparent these stories and encounters are becoming.
Yes.
And it's like we are so close to like truth now that it's ridiculous. Now it's more and more people are seeing it coming forward.
Right. And the thing is, Red Rocks, for people that haven't been there, I've been just outside of where the amphitheater is. And it's a decent ways away from the city center of Denver. Right. So you're up in the mountains. You're elevated up. You're already Denver's known as the Mile High City. It's already way at a very high elevation. So the fact that these things are still being seen, being reported by major mainstream news outlets as legitimate news, I think is really kind of cool, because 5 years ago, this wouldn't have been reported on a source like this.
Not at all. And where did that source come from? Fox News.
Fox News.
So that's pretty big major media source that is covering that.
One of the big four.
Yep. That's bad. I don't know, man. The fact that she says that in that story gives me goosebumps. It's like it knew we were watching it.
Yeah.
And that's when it actively went camo. I mean, I don't know. We're getting closer to the truth.
Yeah,
agreed. But I have one last story for us, and it comes to us from The Sun. We were talking before the show about Over the Pond.
Like the Sky?
The Sun, the UK publication.
The newspaper, yeah.
Yes. This is written by Millie Turner, and it's revived. Dead celebrities are brought back to life with creepy new AI that uses their voices to read audiobooks. The families of late actresses and actors Judy Garland, Sir Lawrence Oliver, James Dean, and Burt Reynolds have agreed for their voices to be used to narrate audiobooks. London-based tech company 11 Labs has developed an AI tool that could recreate these actor voices using incredible accuracy. Actress Liza Minnelli, representing the Garland estate, said the agreement means her mother's voice can be heard by new fans. It's exciting to see our mother's voice available to countless millions of people who loved her, said Minnelli. Our family believes that will bring a new fans to Mama and be exciting to those who already cherish an unparalleled legacy that Mama gave and continues to give the world. Garland will be able to narrate The Wizard of Oz to a whole new generation of children inside the 11 Labs Reader app. Dustin Blank, heard of partnerships at 11 Labs, said Judy Garland, James Dean, Burt Reynolds, and Sir Lawrence Oliver are some of the most celebrated actors in history. We deeply respect their legacies and are honored to have their voices as part of the platform. Adding them to our growing list of narrators marks a major step forward in our mission to make content accessible in any language or any voice. It's not the first time AI is used to revive late figures. I've seen these several times. Amazon gave us its Alexa gadgets to a way to chat with the dead and living celebrities and historical figures using AI at the beginning of the year. The AI argument also triggered a 118-day strike by Hollywood actors amid fears studios could replace them with technology. Among the numerous arguments against AI, some say we should leave the dead rest. What are some of the arguments against AI? I won't go into all of this because it's a long thing, but I'll at least go over the basics. Artificial intelligence is a highly contested issue, and it seems everyone has a stance on it. Here are some common arguments. Loss of jobs. Some industry experts say that AI will basically create new niches in the job market. Ethics. When an AI is trained on a data set, much of the content is taken from the internet. Privacy. Content from private social media accounts can be fed the language models to help train them. And misinformation, as AI tools pulls misinformation from the internet. This may take things out of context or suffer hallucinations that produce nonsensical answers. In response to the announcement from 11 Labs, marketing consultant Corinne Streichert said companies should let the departed rest in peace and make money off of the body of work that was left behind in a post on LinkedIn. She added, besides the loyal fans usually die with them and new stars emerge with new fans. That's why we have generations. Judy Garland was exploited in life, and now she'll be considered to be exploited in death. Another content sound designer Dallas Taylor noted to claims that Garland was heavily exploited during her acting career that spanned more than 40 years. In her particularly written memoir, Get Happy, The Life of Judy Garland, Garland claimed that she was sexually harassed by Louis D. Mayer, co-founder of MGM. It was also widely reported that Garland, at just 16 years old, was unfortunately done horrible things to her, including a prison-style diet while on the set of Wizard of Oz. I love this technology and find it fascinating, but claiming it's done in the most authentic way possible is widely arrogant, Taylor wrote. What's troubling is that with enough of money being thrown at the kids of these people, their voices could be robbed from the grave for profit. Judy Garland was exploited in life, and she continues to be exploited in death. I have some things to say to this, but most importantly, we need to know the hashtag panics take first.
Yeah, well, when you first started out, you said James Dean, Julie Garland, they all agreed to this, but I was like, how did they agree to this if their estates
agree to it, yes.
So that would be spooky within itself. How are they agreeing to this? No, well, this is just another concern about AI, right? We're seeing with artists alive today. That people are just kind of taking their voices, their likeness, I should say,
yeah,
and just reproducing them, and sometimes just without their knowledge, blatantly, just with their voice alone. And now this, even though the estate is maybe saying, okay, why not? Well, how would you feel if you're the person that has since passed and knowing that, your voice, your likeness is being kind of resurrected now for all to see, but really, you're not really in control of it. AI is spooky.
Hashtag Steve's take.
I think it's a slippery slope.
Right? Oh, there's no doubt about it.
I'm not a fan of this whole concept. I mean, you start using it for audiobooks, and then now you've got their voices, and you can use it for anything you want. I think it was as silly as it is. There was a Simpsons Treehouse of Horror episode where Homer becomes death and kills all these celebrities.
Yes.
All so that they could, in death, be then used to sell vacuum cleaners and all sorts of items. I think we're literally right there. We're a step away from that.
No, 100%. You and I had a conversation, I think this was about 2 years ago, when news stories were coming out about smaller content creators,
yes,
families being blackmailed. What it was people take these AI voices of content creators, which you're a content creator in your own right.
Yeah.
They were taking people's
voices out there.
Exactly, mine and yours voices, and they are AI manipulating them to say whatever they want. For some yucks, sure, I get it to an extent. But then there becomes this really nasty side to it of, well, now you can use this to blackmail my mother into thinking I've been kidnapped.
I saw this news.
Yeah, and I had to have a sit-down conversation with Vix and my mom and be like, hi, if I'm being kidnapped, here is a word, and they know the word, I have not revealed that, here is a word that I will say mid-sentence that you will know that I've been kidnapped, not that, I'm very low on the scale, but who knows? It's a weird world out there. I do a lot of cons, so it's a possibility. And I had to have a conversation with both of them, specifically my mom. Vix is a little smarter than that, but my mom, she's older. She don't know much about that stuff,
Right.
And I had to have a talk with her and be like, look, dude, if you're getting a random phone call at some point saying I've been kidnapped, you need to give them money. One, don't give them money. They're whatever, I'll be fine. Two, it's probably a hoax, and here's why. There is a whole moral debate to AI, but the reason I bring it up here is because they're using dead celebrities to narrate audiobooks. That is creepy.
It's really
That
weird.
is like a Ghost in the Shell kind of a moment. If that AI gains sentience and it's using a dead actor's voice, now they have, a whole am I alive and am I dead complex, and now we're dealing with Blade Runner.
Right. Yeah. It's a very morally gray area that we're in, and unfortunately, I don't see there being any kind of resolution.
There's never going to be. Live people are one argument, but using the dead's voices, my word, let them. I guess you could say, well, I'm going to go see a movie that they did already, but it's like that's a legacy piece. It's not like you're doing it for something new. They're gone.
Right. Exactly. They were physically there. They still did it. They still did the voice acting or the physical acting or what have you.
Right.
There's a difference between me going and on Thanksgiving turning on the TV and watching Wizard of Oz versus buying an audiobook through Amazon and having Judy Garland narrate Wizard of Oz to me.
That didn't happen prior.
Right.
We might get a sequel to Wizard of Oz.
They did that already. The Return to Oz with the weird pumpkin
to
guy.
Oz, yeah.
And TikTok the robot. That's a good. And the flying moose head. You've seen that movie?
That's our episode.
Oh my God, the rollerblading zombie things.
So weird.
It's such a weird. And Disney made that one.
The Disney made it. It's very disturbing.
Yes. We have a caller, by the way.
We do have a caller.
John, I'm going to assume this is you.
We don't know.
John, caller.
Wait, time out.
You should probably pick up the phone.
Probably me.
Caller, you're on the air. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can, Bob. How are you guys doing?
John, it's a pleasure to hear
there.
from you. How you doing?
Hey, good. How you doing, Steve?
Doing well, thanks.
Yeah, I tell you what, Bob, if somebody called me and said, hey, you've been kidnapped, bring some money, I'm going under the bed and bringing them sack of pennies, and I'm going to run down there and come and get you. I'm not going to say... I'm not gonna listen like your mom said. Don't give them the money.
I think they'd be more mad if you showed up with a sack of pennies.
That is you know how I know John and my dad are cut from the same.
That's all I got.
You know how I know John and my dad were cut from the same cloth and hung out in an old Polish neighborhood? I have to go under the bed to go to the Polish bank account, as my dad always called it. See, John knows.
I don't trust my money in the bank, but I trust it under my bed. I can see it there every day. I can't see it in the bank. You know what I mean?
Thanks, John. That made me laugh. Reminds me of
But
Dad.
hey, you know what? I'm getting a kick out of you two guys now. It seems like every time you're on the air, Steve, you're giving Bob a little jab there, here and there. Little left and a right, or little suplex. And he gets him riled up a little bit.
I'm glad you appreciate it, and I'm glad the listeners and the viewers all appreciate it, because look, I rib you, I tease you, it's nothing but love, but it is so fun to catch you off your game every now and then.
Never fails.
At the end of the day, both your hands are being raised as winners, right?
Yes. Quite literally your case, Steve. You have a wrestling belt here.
But only one of us has a title. So
I mean, I have a title, CEO of Bob After Dark LLC.
Yeah, but is it made out of gold?
It's made out of paper. It's my tax ID and everything.
Sounds like that's something we're going to have to work on, Steve. Getting Bob a belt, some kind of belt with maybe a big D on there or something. For Bob,
for dummy?
No, a B.
Oh, they said D. I'm like for dummy.
No. But hey, I'm trying to follow this AI, the audio. So, who would listen? I mean, who would listen to audio version of Judy Garland and James Dean? I mean, now, in this day and age, I mean, there are people from the past. What kind of audio would it be? Well, I mean, like you said, Steve, is she going to be? You're going to hear the version of the Wizard of Oz, or
that's assuming what they're going with is Judy Garland's voice is going to be used for the audio book of Wizard of Oz that you can purchase through them at some point. And it's unfortunate because now that leads the door to fill in the blank. Bela Lugosi's now reading Dracula.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Like if you have James Dean, is he going to read Rebel Without a Cause?
Oh, 100%.
I mean, that's weird.
Okay,
but somebody's going to be into that.
I understand what you're saying, but wouldn't that maybe perhaps make it a little bit more interesting? Though, even I know obviously they're gone, but you don't think that? Well, first of all, who would want to listen to the audio of Wizard of Oz? In this, like I said, in this day and age,
it's still a pretty timeless classic.
I don't know if the kids are. I don't know if the adults would, but wouldn't that maybe make it a little bit more exciting?
No, I mean, the kids are too busy dabbing and playing NCAA 25.
That just
that's what I'm saying. I mean, how would this be a hit? I mean, is it something that's going to fly off the shelves? That hey, I got the audio version of Judy Garland, narrating the Wizard of Oz, or I mean, how popular would this be?
I would say to the modern child who is, I mean, Steve mine, and even Kyle Panic's counterpart, that Tony Panic guy, we all grew up in the last generation of not being glued to electronics all the time. I had them, don't get me wrong, but I wasn't entirely glued to them. Now the Gen Z after me is growing up with technology like full blown. Social media is a thing. I didn't have that, younger. But I would assume that, Wizard of Oz is one of those timeless classics, right? It's one of those movies, and I would say that there's definitely a market for newer parents showing Wizard of Oz to their kids and being like, hey, now you could read this book that's done by Judy Garland. It takes one good advertising spin to make it sound like we're preserving history with this, and you'll have people interested. But I think from a morality standpoint, and I might be a little biased because I'm a content creator for a living, it's like now you can use my voice and my likeness to do your own Bob After Dark episodes, and that's terrifying to me. So from my standpoint, I don't like it, but I could get it from a consumer standpoint why it would be fascinating. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I agree and I disagree in some aspects, but I mean, I don't know. I just don't see, what these kids are learning in school and that today.
Oh, sure.
That they're going to buy into something like this. Maybe the older adults would.
I think
it starts. They grew up with the Wizard of Oz, but I don't.
I think it starts here, but I don't say it ends here. I think the reason why it's easier to get the James Dean and the Garland estates, because I don't know how rich their kids and grandkids and probably even grandkids are from their, whatever they left over from their passing. But as the time goes on and those estates dry up, this is a new way to water that estate a little bit. You know what I'm saying? So you have a point with maybe like the James Dean Rebel Without a Cause. I don't know how many people would be into that. But now you get to the point of, hey, I can have Christian Bale read like The Dark Knight Returns, the novelization. And it's like, did Christian Bale make any money off of that? That's where it becomes, that's where it ends. The end point is modern age. I don't need to pay these actors this amount of money. I could just AI them. And then you get to the point of, when are humans needed again? And then we get closer to that concept of, I can't think of the word off the top of my head, but we get to that concept of what's reality anymore,
And I feel like in reality, this is going to be something. Right now, everybody's kind of throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks with AI. And I feel like this may be one of those concepts where they're like, hey, we've got this idea. If it makes money, great, we can do more. But, producing audiobooks is very cheap to do.
Yes.
So they can easily turn a profit on this. And they're like, and if it doesn't work, they're not losing a lot on it anyway.
Well, it's like an investor. I mean, it's anybody like an inventor selling, or anybody throwing out his product out there. We'll see if it works. It might take off. It might not take off. We might make money. We not.
I think it's the concept of the way they were able to transform those voices, because it sounds like this is the most realistic.
The hook on it.
Yep, the Judy Garland is the nice red ribbon on the box that is absolute terrifying. What I'm most afraid of, like this AI takeover thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I get you on that point. But hey, glad to hear you guys are back
thanks,
again.
John. We appreciate
good show as always, and you guys have a good week.
Thanks, John. You too, man.
All right. See you guys.
All right, how about the three of us take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll dive into the lore. How's that sound?
All right.
That works.
All right, for our live audience, stick around. You're about to see our faces for a couple seconds. Be quiet. And for our podcast fans, you're about to be hearing words from a podcast that you should be listening to. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Ghostly.
Pat, what are you doing?
What? I want people to know that we're a podcast that takes a deep dive into some of the scariest ghost stories.
But we don't do the creepy voices or weird sound effects. We debate the ghost stories. And aren't you supposed to be the skeptic?
I am, but they'll find that out once they listen.
Look, all you have to do is tell them to listen to Ghostly, and that our listeners get to decide which stories are real.
And which stories are just old folklore.
Exactly.
Download Ghostly wherever you find great podcasts.
Oh, jeez.
And we're back. Oh, hey there, guys.
Oh, hey there, Bob.
Hey, Bob.
Count, what'd you do during break? We'll start with you.
I created my own AI Bob.
I will murder you where you sit. I have my wooden stake already sharpened.
How are you to take on me an AI Bob?
I want to. That makes me angry beyond counsel.
AI Bob, I would put AI. I mean, you and AI Bob, it's going to have to be a war here because AI Bob is ready to go. He's already in the markets. He's big in Japan.
I'm waiting for the day that I get my own product bootlegged. I feel like any, person's like, I'm waiting for that moment when I end up on like hand sanitizers in another country.
Yeah.
I use that as a Cole Commander reference because that's what happened to him. But I'm waiting for that moment to happen. And no, there's not going to be an AI Bob. I'm sure somebody out there is probably toying with the idea right now. And I will tell you that will make me disgruntled.
An army of Bobs.
Oh, Jesus, there's only one of me. That's good enough. Hey, Steve, what'd you do during break?
I invested in AI Bob. Look, the idea was pitched to me. I was like, can we make it say literally anything? And the Panic said, yeah. So, yeah, absolutely. So, all my wrestling money has been invested in that. Expect to see AI Bob hitting the shelves and hitting your Alexa units within the next month.
Yeah, you can have your own AI Bob do a story about anything you want, Johnny Appleseed, fill in the blank.
Listen to him tell you the history of Valentine's Day.
Whew, boy, that's a throwback. All right, so it's not very often on the show.
Wait, what did you do during the break?
Oh, crud, I forgot to give you guys what I during break.
He wrote us all cease and desist.
I wrote you guys all solid cease and desist. No, I actually took up professional wheelbarrow racing.
Oh, how's that going?
It's going okay. I'm number 3 NA right now.
Oh, wow.
We need to Count Panic. We need to make sure that the Bob AI can do wheelbarrow races.
No, I mean you can't have an AI robot.
I'll
now.
program
That
it.
would be I would throw a magnet on that so fast.
I've got the prototype.
Oh my god!
It's in the trunk.
Anyway, it's not very often on the show when we can have a sequel or even a trilogy. Since me doing the show, I've done one trilogy, which was the Gates to Hell trilogy. You could catch that on early podcast. That was way back in 2020. I did those. I want to say, I mean, we do monthly themes, but those aren't like really continuations. I don't even know if you consider this a continuation except name only, but for once I could say we could have a sequel. So the last episode of Bob After Dark, we were sitting down and we were talking about the Enfield horror. And if you recall, I say at the beginning of the beginning of the lore part of that episode, I say, not to be confused with the Enfield poltergeist.
Yep.
Well, now I can sit here and say, hey guys, we're going to be talking about the Enfield poltergeist, not to be confused with the Enfield horror.
And if you want to learn about the Enfield horror, it's on the podcast, and you can check that out now.
Now, it's available right now wherever you listen to podcasts at.
That's called Synergy,
That
Bob.
is called Synergy, and that's why I'm going to see if we can find another Enfield thing. It might not have anything to do with the paranormal. It might be like the Enfield stock crash.
What's stopping us now, Bob?
The Johnny Appleseed Part 2, baby.
The Enfield Star Wars figures.
Why do you hate me? All right, so this is, before I begin, this case, the name might not ring a bell to you, but the story will. because not only was it I haven't seen the show yet because I don't have Apple TV Plus, but there was a miniseries based on it last year on Apple TV Plus. Do you have that streaming service?
I do not, no.
Count, you ever see it?
I haven't seen it.
Okay, so outside of Apple TV, there was a small movie made about it called The Conjuring.
It was an art film.
Yeah, it was called The Conjuring 2.
I think I've heard of it.
Yeah, The Conjuring 2 did this as a story. I don't think it's called The Conjuring 2, the Enfield Poltergeist.
I don't think a lot of people saw it.
No, that's James Gunn only made like 12. It's not James, what's his name? Not James Gunn. What's James Wan? The guy from the Saw franchise. Help me. What's his name? Whatever, that guy who did the Conjuring series. I have not seen this movie. I will be completely honest with you. I saw The Conjuring, and I saw part of The Nun. As a paranormal investigator, let me tell you what I have problems with those movies. I could turn it, I could watch like a vampire movie or a monster movie or like a slasher movie. I'm like, whatever, suspension of disbelief. But then I get to the Conjuring movie verse, right? And it's like, all right, I'm really happy you guys are shedding a light on this, but man, you are really exploiting people by this based on real life events nonsense. Yeah. You could eliminate that and be like, this is based on a story, but no, based on real events, it's a little malarkey because
there's a town named Enfield.
I mean, the movie, if it's anything like the first Conjuring movie, which did I do an episode about that? There is the parent family. The parent family existed. That's a real case, but some of that stuff is really stretched for the imagination. Yeah. And I am going to warn some of you. This is an Ed and Lorraine Warren case. You could take that how you will. Some people are more big fans of Ed and Lorraine Warren. There are some people who are just fans of Lorraine and not care for Ed at all. And then there's people who say that they really exploited our community for lots of money. I am not in the realm of hating on anybody, just like I don't hate ZB, if you catch my drift. I don't hate them. I just think that...
I liked Scrubs.
That's JB. Not
Zach
ZB.
Braff was cool.
Oh, dude, I thought you meant JB was his name. Anyway.
It's JD.
JD, there you go. Well, yeah. JB is Jacob Bartlett. That's what I call him. Anyway, no, ZB, I don't hate him either. I get Lorraine is such a nice individual character, and like, I think she had gifts. We'll start off by saying that. I think she had gifts, and I think Ed was an extremely smart businessman who knew how to take advantage of the situation. That's all I got to say on the matter. Give me your PG take on the Warrens, Steve. Gently.
I think it was a lot of hooey.
Mm-hmm.
Hooey.
I think that's the nicest way I could say it. I think it was very the things they allegedly did or didn't do. Were dubious at best.
Count, your take on the Warrens.
Yeah, well, you know what? They're certainly historical figures in the ghost hunting community.
Yes.
Conjuring, right? That's how we kind of...
And there's some of their biggest cases other than the Conjuring. The Devil Made Me Do It case, the werewolf case. There was also the, maybe you've heard of it, the Amityville horror.
Yeah. I
That
don't know.
was
I'm
them
not,
as well.
and I may not be too up on like the backstory of the lives as far as like how they were as human beings, but there's no doubt they're at the forefront of
They
a lot of
were
these stories.
pioneers in our industry.
Yeah.
They knew how to entertain a crowd with what we do. Because you have to understand, paranormal investigations, especially back then, you were made fun of relentlessly for doing that. Maybe if you were around during the spiritualist movement, maybe that would have made you cool.
Right.
But after that, there's a reason why the Ghostbusters movie kind of starts with them like being hacks at the university.
Right.
I mean, don't get me wrong. We're not widely accepted now either, but I think with the, with TV, Travel Channel paranormal shows as popular as they are,
People
it's
are
a
more
little
willing
bit
to talk about
exactly,
it now.
and the ghost hunts are more popular. So if there's anything that I think we can all be on the same page of, is that Ed and Lorraine Warren were extremely successful in what they set out to do.
They made investigations and, to an extent, demonology more mainstream.
Yes. And I don't think there's I don't think that's a problem. I would say that there's some valid arguments to make of the ways they went about it. Yes. But I will say at the end of the day, I think Lorraine, and this is my opinion, and people can take it how they will, I do believe Lorraine was I've talked to people that have known her. I have friends that done investigations with her. They've all said the same thing. She was the sweetest old lady they've ever worked with. They've all told me, even straight-hearted investigators have said Lorraine was really gifted. And once Ed was gone, she was very much better at what she was doing. And again, that's all I got to say on the matter. I think their nephew is now in charge of their artifacts. I believe he was left with some nonsense that he doesn't even know to begin with, because I don't think they did either.
Right.
That's all I got to say on the matter. So let's move on. I have a couple stories here about the Enfield poltergeist, including the story, and I'm going to be reading this from the Enfield. This is from the Haunted Rooms, which is a UK website based on UK ghost stories, which this is what it is. So the Enfield poltergeist, the name given to the story of the paranormal phenomena that occurred at an average council house in Enfield, North London, is one of Britain's most beloved and well-known ghost stories. It also been the center of major Hollywood feature film The Conjuring 2, as well as the Enfield horror series on Sky TV with both star-studded cast. The Sky TV is also the Apple TV Plus here in the States. The story of the Enfield poltergeist house has divided many, with some respected members of the paranormal societies believing the account of the Hodgson family to be entirely accurate. However, many skeptics, which I knew you were going to have a field day with this one, Steve. However, many skeptics think that many elements of the story embark on it being a hoax. Although we may never actually know what happened, the poltergeist in Enfield is still one of the most fascinating ghost stories in modern British history. The story began in 1977 and centered on the Hodgson family, mainly on the youngest daughter, Janet. Mother Peggy, daughters Margaret and Janet, 13 and 11, Johnny, 10, and Billy, 7, lived in an average semi-detached council house in Enfield. We usually hear tales of ghostly encounters in grander settings, hotels, castles, ancient buildings, so the haunted house in Enfield resonated with some families across Britain because it was real. It was close to home. It felt like it could happen to us. The first event in the haunting is disputed, but it's thought to be either the beds moving around Janet and Margaret's room or the chest of drawers moving forwards and then moving backwards. In both cases, Peggy told the children to stop messing around and didn't believe anything was happening until she moved the chest drawers back into place, only to see it move once again. With that, she became frightened and ran into the neighbor's house. The neighbors then accompanied them back to the house, only to hear other unexplained noises, such as knocks and bangings and noises from different various parts of the house, with no particular source. The police were called, and they too heard noises but could not trace where they were coming from. One of the many reasons that the haunted house in Enfield became such a worldwide sensation was because it was the many of the paranormal events that took place inside the home were captured on film. So a lot of these events were captured. Once the police were called, many more events began to occur. Items regularly were thrown around. Janet, the youngest daughter, spoke in strange languages and snarls, and she was thrown around her bedroom. Probably the most famous image of this case, you guys could look it up. It's actually one of my more favorite paranormal pictures ever taken because it's eerie. It's shows her midair in seemingly an impossible leap. Maurice Grosse and Guy Playfair, two of the investigators in the Society of Physical Research case, maintained that they believed the haunting was genuine and caught many of the now infamous images on film. Much of the equipment used in their investigation was often found to be malfunctioning upon entering the household, despite working perfectly beforehand. However, Janet was found to have a tape recorder and was videotaped bending spoons on another occasion. They believe that much of the activity surrounding the Enfield ghost was genuine. However, they suspect that some of the occurrences were exaggerated by Janet for increased attention by reporters. For example, Playfair stated that Bill, one of the voices Janet became most well known for, had some similar vocal tics and habits to Janet, such as changing the topic of conversations often. Whilst this doesn't necessarily mean that Bill wasn't, and I quote, real, it does raise questions. Why would Bill speak in such a manner that is so similar to Janet? Although there are many theories about the truth of the Enfield horror house, there are many who believe that the Enfield poltergeist is a hoax and nothing more than a fragment of the creative yet troubled young girl. Many investigators believe that the story begins and ends with Janet. The newspapers wrote about the Enfield ghost and the Enfield poltergeist. Many also wrote scathing stories about Janet, Janet the young girl at the heart of the story. Whether or not she was lying about some of the activity, we'll never know, but there is little doubt that most people's minds and that at least some of the phenomena at the beginning was real. Perhaps Janet started to appreciate the increased attention that she, a middle child and working class family, was finally starting to get, for maybe the very first time. So she began to exaggerate some of the activities around her to gain more notoriety, exposure, and attention. Or perhaps Janet's story echoes other poltergeist stories. Typically, poltergeist encounters occur around young women before entering puberty. Janet was at the precisely right age for such an encounter, and for all we know, some of her behaviors, such as bending spoons and hiding a tape recorder, may have been encouraged by said poltergeist. This enters Ed and Lorraine Warren. The Warrens were well-known paranormal investigators between the 60s and the 70s, and they may well be better known today by following the blockbuster films based on their stories. The Conjuring, The Conjuring 2, and the Annabelle films. The Conjuring 2 true story differs from the film quite a bit. Surprise!
Who would
have thought? The Conjuring 2 showed the Warrens as being incredibly involved in the case of Enfield Poltergeist House, but this may be more than a little bit misleading. Maybe a little bit more than misleading.
Shocking.
Guy Playfair, one of the investigators on the case, said that the Warrens turned up to Enfield House uninvited and stayed just for a singular day. Ed Warren also reportedly told Playfair that a lot of money could be made from the case, which could indicate why the Warrens themselves turned up to do their own investigation uninvited. What about Bill? Let's talk about Bill for a moment.
Let's talk about Bill.
Perhaps the most interesting part of the whole case centers on Bill. Not to be confused with Bill Lee, the child of the house. Bill was the voice that Janet was speaking through, and was in a stern, low tone. Some research suggests that the idea of using a different voice or several different voices might have been planted in Janet's head by Grosse. Janet told reporters that Grosse had told her that the voices were needed to talk, and immediately following the voices came. Something unexplained about Bill, however, is how Janet could have known that Bill died of a hemorrhage in the armchair in the living room of the house, which was later confirmed by his son that a man named Bill had died in the house of a hemorrhage, sitting in the chair in the living room. The Bill story gives the Enfield poltergeist case that feeling and tips skeptics over from not being sure into becoming believers. So what happened? After a year and a half of the activity, the phenomena at the Enfield house abruptly just came to an end. No one knew why, but these sorts of hauntings are common with poltergeists. They stop, they start, and the family gets back to normal. During that year and a half, many phenomena occurred. Furniture moving, electrical equipment malfunctioning. Janet spoke in different voices and snarls, and knocks and bangs sounds could be heard from all around the house. And from what we can tell, the family could not find the source of any of these activities, at least in the beginning. Whether the Hodgson family was telling the whole truth remains to be seen, but we still can't come up with a reasonable explanation for the Bill story. Let's pass it off to you, because that's a lot to unpack. I have more to talk about, but let's start with your take on it.
Man, it's a lot. Like you said, it's a lot, because there's so many different incidents to potentially go over, right? So, generally speaking, a lot of these reports are kind of similar to what you would get in a demonic possession case. And so in that respect, none of this is unusual. However, almost everything on that was discussed has some kind of natural explanation. And there have been skeptics and researchers that have come in, I'm sure you're going to talk about that in a bit, that have debunked a lot of these things. But the only real outlier on all this of something that couldn't easily be explained is knowing about the Bill hemorrhage.
Yeah.
But everything else, I feel like you can really kind of explain away if you truly want to.
The society that initially went in there and did the investigations, one of the people that were a part of that group was an investigator by the name of Harry Price, which I've done a story on a long time ago, which is a really good one. You guys should listen to that. He was known for being a little on the wacky side in investigations, so I don't know any of the people that were investigating in that house.
I mean, let's be fair. Almost every paranormal investigator I've ever met is some level of eccentric.
Yes, but our jobs are to go in there middle ground neutral. We are not supposed to go into an investigation being like,
in an ideal world,
if you are I don't want to cause a ruckus here, but if you are good at your job, you are supposed to go in middle of the ground, middle of the road, neutral, and let things convince you of the otherwise.
Agreed.
I would even argue that you're not even supposed to go in there with a heavy skeptical attitude either.
I think in my opinion, you go in there with a clear mind of like, okay, let's see what we can find.
Exactly. Because then you're not starting with a bias. And this is an argument against heavy skeptical too. If you go in there with a heavy skeptic mind, and you're more leaning skeptical than me.
Absolutely.
But you can agree, if you go in there with a whole negative attitude that I'm going to explain everything, then you're going to start making up excuses why things happen.
I feel like, and again, this is just my personal opinion on things, and I'll probably get heat for this hot take here. But I think if you're not going into an investigation as either middle ground or slightly skeptical, I don't think you're doing it right.
No.
I think if you're going in saying, yeah, there's probably a ghost here, you're going to then find things that confirm it's a confirmation bias.
Yes.
Is what it's called.
I would agree.
And you're going in, and anything that happens that's potentially paranormal, that helps confirm your bias.
Yes.
And if you're going in, like you said, if you're going in as an extreme skeptic and saying this place isn't haunted at all, well, nothing that you see or hear or that happens to you is going to convince you. You can have, if you're going in saying this place isn't haunted and I'm going to prove it, and an apparition appears in front of you, that's still not going to be enough. Yep. Generally speaking, that's still not going to be enough for that investigator.
No, I would agree with you 100%. And there are skeptical investigators that go out there too. Amazing Randy was one of the most famous people that ever did that kind of a thing. Yeah. I think he was a little hardcore on his skeptic side, but I respect the guy a lot for what he did.
Tons.
And magicians too over the years. Back in the day, they would send magicians in with these investigators so they could try to find tricks around the house.
One came in to investigate this case.
Exactly, and that's 100%. So you
magician and just to follow up on that really quick. Magicians that's their whole job, is to trick people.
Yes.
They're illusionists. They know every little kind of sleight of hand, every kind of parlor trick that you could do in order to convince someone that they're seeing something that isn't actually happening.
Right.
So magicians, and a lot of people don't realize this, magicians on investigations are probably some of the best people to have on your team.
100%, man.
Because they see things different than you do. They see things different than I do. They're looking at the world different because they know different things than we do. So, it's fascinating when you see some of what magicians find.
100%. But my point I'm getting at here is, I don't know the Grosse guy that went in there and did the investigations.
Right.
If he was if he came in there middle ground and he wasn't hyping up a prepubescent girl, and being like, hey, let me interview you for a little bit. If he was egging her on, now it's almost like you're putting a suggestion in the head to draw something out versus letting it naturally happen.
Right.
I've been on investigations where people start having the growls and whatnot, and you have these conversations with people. I've interviewed people like that. Your job is to go in there and see what's going on from a neutral standpoint. Because the other thing you have to do, and I'm not trying to sound mean here, guys, so please do not come at me with pitchforks and torches. There's also a thing called mental illness that can happen in some of these cases where people legitimately are ill versus there's not really a paranormal experience, it's an illness.
Right.
And I'm not trying to sound mean. I'm not trying to say that all investigations are like that. I'm just saying that's always a possibility. And that's something you need to take into consideration. If you're going in there and you're like 100% this is a ghost situation, I'm going to make this young girl go through it and say these things.
Right.
Now,
I've been on cases myself where, kid's supposed to be seeing something's happening to the kid.
Right.
You talk with the parents and the parents are, all like, oh my gosh, this is what's happening. Then you talk to the kids and the kids sound very coached because they've been hyped up to believe this and that it's getting them attention.
Yes.
It's a regular thing.
I want to point out that Janet was 11 years old at the time. 11 years old, you're a little, you're a kid at 11. You're not even like preteens at that age.
Right.
That is an interesting age for something like this to be going on. And it's like, I don't know Janet's intentions of being an 11-year-old girl having all this media attention and doing kind of weird things.
Right.
So it's like, yeah, you could be lying, but the thing is, what do you gain if for the parents, for example, because both the parents said that there were weird things going on in that house. The neighbors, the male neighbor, his name was Vic Nottingham. And Vic Nottingham was the one that went over and started searching the house to try to find these knocks when they first were being heard. And it's like the situations just kept happening. Now, what is fascinating to me is these things were happening with police there. The police witnessed the unusual going on in the Enfield case.
Right. I mean, but a lot of the things that they witnessed, and again, I'm not trying to play the super skeptic.
Oh, no. It's important to have that take.
A lot of the things that they witnessed were things that you can find a decent explanation for. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. I just because the police witnessed, and yes, typically speaking, when we talk about credible eyewitnesses,
yes,
high level, high value eyewitnesses to anything paranormal, ghost, UFO, cryptid, you name
whatever,
it.
yeah.
Those are the ones that you want because they're trained to observe.
Right.
If you're good at what you do, you can trick anyone.
Yes. I will say that there's a lot of skeptical side to this, and here's a direct quote from Janet when she was a little older. Janet, along with her other siblings, have even admitting to faking some of the events just to see if the investigators could catch that they were faking it. Oh yeah, this is a direct quote from Janet. Oh yeah, once or twice we faked the phenomena just to see if Mr. Grosse and Mr. Playfair would catch us, and they always caught us lying.
I mean, but here's the problem now.
Yes.
Right? As soon as an investigator,
yeah,
regardless of where you are on the spectrum,
right,
if you have someone that is saying, well, I have faked some things and they caught those things, you have to now look at your other evidence and throw out your other evidence as potentially tainted. it would be the same thing if you were in a court, you
Yes.
know, and if you were on trial and the prosecution, you know, if the defense proved that, like, hey, this was faked, okay, now everything else gets called into question and there's your doubt for everything else that happens. So that alone throws a huge monkey wrench into everything that has happened.
Yes. Let's fast forward to now, because there's a legacy to this, and then we'll get to the... Are you good over there?
Somebody try calling. Call back. If you
Caller, you're on. He calls back. All right, so let me fast forward, because there's an interesting... There's more philosophical takes on what went on there.
Do you
want to go do what
do we want to do a little bit more on the skeptic thing?
Oh, yeah, I actually have a whole article written from the BBC about the skeptical side of things.
Okay. Because while we're on it,
sure,
we might as well just continue, because we, you know,
no, of course,
we briefly mentioned that there were magicians that
take it from here,
that did investigate this briefly. There was a magician, an American magician by the name of Milbourne Christopher, who briefly investigated the Enfield occurrences, and while he was investigating, did not observe anything that he could call paranormal. He was dismayed by what he felt was suspicious activities on the part of Janet, later concluding that, quote, poltergeist, that the quote, poltergeist was nothing more than the antics of a little girl who wanted to cause trouble and who was very, very clever, unquote. And then ventriloquist Ray Allen also visited the home,
which is such an interesting person to bring on an investigation.
It's kind of out of left field, but it makes perfect sense.
It makes perfect sense. Like, when you think about it, it's such a clever person to bring along.
He visited the house and concluded that Janet's male voices were simply vocal tricks. You know, we already talked about, you know, how good magicians are. Ventriloquists are the same thing, but with their voice, right?
Yes.
So, you know, having both of these trained entertainers come out who are at the top of their game and be like, okay, yeah, none of this is real, you know, or they can find flaws in what's going on, I think is also a very important thing to note on this.
Sure. I have an article from somebody that actually interviewed Janet later in life.
Yeah.
So this was from 2015 from The Guardian, which then got kind of circulated through the BBC. A new series, The Enfield Hauntings, begins Saturday night. This was back in 2015, so this was another series that happened. But a couple years ago, and this was written by Deborah Hyde. A couple years ago, I was asked to appear on ITV's The Morning to discuss the Enfield and, I quote, poltergeist. It's not an unusual request per as an editor of The Skeptic. I get to be a free thinker, do show in various media from time to time. But there are two things that made this one odd. The first was that the focus of the famous 77 to 79 poltergeist case, Janet Hodgson, was making a rare public appearance. She has appeared in a documentary or two and had been filmed heavily in shadow for the Jane Goldman investigations, but does not make a habit of it. Secondly, I was asked by the producers to be very gentle with her to try to keep the principles of how people could come to believe in the supernatural and ghosts, in all probability, does not exist. The reason from the producers' concern became very obvious in the green room. Janet seemed very pleasant and very, very, very nervous. Guy Lyon Playfair, one of the case's two lead investigators and author of This House is Haunted, the true story of the Enfield poltergeist, was heavily preoccupied with the subject of trying to sell the idea of a dramatic adaptation of his book. Well, it seems he succeeded. The first installment of The Sky Living's The Enfield Haunting airs on Sunday. This was years ago, so skip that part. As well as writing and talking about why people believe in the supernatural. I coordinate and production, manage TV and film departments, including special effects, makeup ones, think zombies, vampires, ghosts at work, and then at home too. So I have a professional interest in this series from more than one angle. In summary, the Enfield haunting was a very enjoyable, like all adaptations, but it is miles better than for the narrative enhancements, hence ever present, based on disclaimer adorning such productions, which I talked about earlier. The fact that the two lead investigators, Guy Lyon Playfair and Maurice Grosse, met each other at a society for for physical research, meet rather than one flamboyantly turning up a haunted door to challenge the other, just for one example, is a forgivable alteration of pace and impact. Real life rarely falls so beautiful into place, so don't expect a faithful adaptation of the paperback this Sunday evening. Eleanor Warrington Cox as Janet is an absolutely superb, and she kind of says that it's great. Would I be thrilled to attend the events of 77 to 79? Probably not. There is evidence that a range of reasonable factors that can lead perfectly sane people to believe that they are in the presence of the supernatural force. Guy Lyon Playfair may have thought that an established scientists tend to ignore it altogether and pretend it doesn't exist in the 70s, but it was true then, and it certainly isn't now. Psychologist Chris French runs a university department devoted to anomalistic psychology, and I participated in creepy experiments with neuroscientist Jason Braithwaite. Psychologist Caroline Watt is the founder of the Kostler Parapsychology Unit, and pioneer Susan Blackmore has helped to clarify the reality behind many of the weird phenomena, from out-of-the-body experiences to telepathy. They are to the tip of the iceberg. So what would a scientist say about the Enfield phenomena? The Poltergeist annoyed a family of one mother and had 3 children, and another was away at school for 2 years between 77 and 79, and seemed to focus on the 2 progressant sisters, Margaret and mostly Janet. The first thing to note is that the occurrences didn't happen under controlled circumstances. People frequently see what they expect to see, and their senses being organized and shaped by their prior experiences and beliefs is a process called top-down processing. There was a particular interesting case of expectation feeling perceptions reported by a French botanist talking with the connections of a vampire. Lyon Playfair pointed out that eventually the whole family was seeing visions or apparitions of faces in windows, shadowy figures on stairs, and this wouldn't surprise a psychologist. An experiment by Richard Wiseman at Hampton Court concluded that believers reported significantly more anomalous experiences than disbelievers, and were significantly more likely to indicate that these had been due to a ghost. In fact, it was hard to see more rigid data collection could have occurred at all, as the site was the home of an understandably protective mother. Mrs. Harper made it very clear to Grosse, the other investigator, and I, that while we were welcome at any time, she did not want others in her house again, wrote Playfair in the aftermath of the visits to the doubters who thought the girls were playing growing up. In addition, expectation can inadvertently prime a situation's participants. I perceived several examples of this at Enfield, including at about 5:16 minutes into the interview here, where Janet says one night Mr. Grosse was talking about it, and he said, "All we need now is the voices to talk," and the voices obliged shortly afterwards. When Graham Morris of the Daily Mirror told the girls that Poltergeist caused outbreaks of fire, the Enfield entity turned its hand to pyromania. The Lego and marbles that the Poltergeist was fond of throwing seemed to materialize from out of nowhere. However, a risk of tautology, we don't see things until we see them. It's called unintentional blindness. We don't have the processing bandwidth to pay attention to everything all the time, and often don't notice when things have been placed or have disappeared. It's not that odd when witnesses were surprised to see objects in one place when they thought they were in another. A neighbor, Mrs. Burcombe, who saw a plastic rod materialize in front of her eyes, was probably just experiencing a sudden awareness of it. Lyon Playfair was, to judge by our conversation on this morning, resistant to the idea that he could have been fooled by children. But but as I reminded him to the day that Ellis Wright and Francis Griffiths, the creators of the Cotton Langley fairy hoax in the 1920s, pulled wool over the eyes of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, creator of deductive reasoning poster boy Sherlock Holmes. Janet seems to have been by far the strongest focus of the events at Enfield. Lyon Playfair thought that the thing uses Janet's sense perceptions if she doesn't know something nor perceptions, nor does it, and she was developing an alarmingly accurate gift for precognition in relation to its activities. Her mother saw crayons and bits of Lego appear and noted that they keep coming from nowhere in Janet's room. It seems if it be torn out of a magazine article found that in the house, Janet had probably heard of Matthew Manning's Another Child focus of poltergeist phenomena. Manning's mother had reported that the first strange event in their house was the disappearance of a teapot, and it was also one from the first incidents at Enfield. One of the first incidents, teapot went missing. Janet complained once that she was being stifled. Somebody was putting a hand over her nose and mouth and stopped her from breathing, and that there was an old man sitting in the chair. Anyone who has ever suffered from sleep paralysis, me included, will recognize the breathing difficulties and hallucinations that accompany by a harmless and transient sleep blip. She experienced by another manifestation of the same thing when she was in bed all of a sudden and felt something pull her by the arms out of bed. She's not short to the company that judged the between 15 and 40%, depending on the question of the people asked, who have suffered from sleep paralysis at least once. I have felt the same thing being dragged out of bed. In short, Janet and her family were going through an extended rough patch. She was, at all accounts, a bright and energetic child. Her father and mother were divorced, unusual in those days, and not very amicably. Mrs. Harper said that the situation with her ex-husband and his new partner had been distressing the effect on all the children. Touchingly, the television was almost the one object in the house never disturbed in way throughout the case. I'm the same age as Janet, and well remember the importance of the box in the corner of an age before iPads and Xboxes. It's worth remembering that many people who visited the house at Enfield did not favor the poltergeist explanation. Janet's gruff voices were thought, we were just talking about that, from Ray Allen to be an inexplicable voice trick. Bill, one of Janet's voices, had a habit of suddenly changing the topic. It was also the same habit Janet did, noted Lyon Playfair. Illusionist Milbourne Christopher thought that the only spirits involved in this case were the high spirits of girls. Several psychiatric professionals throughout the whole thing would stop if Grosse and Playfair would just leave the situation alone. A few hundred words is a significant insufficient space to cover all the many ways of interpreting the reported occurrences at Enfield that don't involve ghosts, but I hope I've made a start. Personally, I find it plausible if somebody suggested that two bright girls feeling abandoned by their father and given focused attention by two kind men, in all probability evaporate if the strange phenomena could have been motivated to manifest a poltergeist. Maurice Grosse had a long interest in the subject of the supernatural and suffered a tragic loss, that of his young daughter, by the way, who was also named Janet, who had been killed in a motorcycle accident. The day on this morning, Janet struck me so much as a highly unsuited to public speaking that I could wonder what or who on earth could have persuaded her to take drastic or deeply unsuited to her personality, stepping in on an appearance of live TV. She shook like a leaf in airing, and we hugged, and I hope it helped. So what should you do if you get into a poltergeist in your home? Lyon Playfair wrote, Kramer has observed that poltergeists have never seemed to attack atheists, and belief of families involved may be well influenced of the course of events. That's a lot to unpack there, but this is an actual person that writes for The Skeptic. It's a big publication among the skeptical community that really probably aren't the biggest fans of Bob After Dark, or maybe they are for the storytelling aspect, but these people are like hardcore skeptics that write this publication. It's fascinating. They have some really good articles in there. I've read a couple myself over the years. And this person interviewed Janet and was taking all of the data from there, and they bring up some good points. Yes. The TV was never affected during the case. A TV was not a very well replaced object in the 70s. Correct. You get one, And that stayed with you until the 90s.
They were expensive.
Yep. The concept that
nothing of worth got damaged.
No. And, even drawing the conclusions that Maurice bought into this case a lot because his daughter was also named Janet that suffered a loss. Their argument being that people who suffer losses that tragic tend to lean into the paranormal a little bit more as an explanation for what happens next. This person seemed like they treated Janet very respectfully during their interview, though, which was really nice.
Right.
But there's a lot to unpack there about this case. But there are certain things that I can't just put my finger on and calling it a day. The girl was 11 years old and knew about the guy who died in the house in the corner in a chair of a hemorrhage. I can tell you. Well, go on if you have.
I was just gonna say. So let me, because I have some further skeptical context to add.
Oh, sure, of course.
Skeptic Joe Nickel of the U.S.-based Committee for the Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal examined the findings of paranormal investigators of the Playfair and Grosse investigation and criticized them for being over-credulous. When a supposedly disembodied demonic voice was heard, Playfair noted that, quote, "As always, Janet's lips hardly seemed to be moving," unquote. He states that a remote-controlled still camera, the photographer was not present in the room with the girls, was timed to take a picture every 15 seconds, was shown by investigator Melvin Harris to reveal pranking by the girls. He argues that a photo allegedly depicting Janet levitating actually shows her bouncing off the bed as if it were a trampoline. Harris called the photos examples of common gymnastics and said, quote, "It's worth remembering that Janet was a school sports champion." Nickel also pointed out that a tape recorder malfunction that Grosse attributed to supernatural activity SPR President David Fontana described as an occurrence, quote, "which appeared to defy the laws of mechanics," unquote, was a peculiar threading jam that occurs with older model reel-to-reel tape recorders. He also said that Ed Warren was, quote, "notorious for exaggerating and even making up incidents in such cases," which we have discussed. And then skeptics have also argued that the alleged poltergeist voice that originated from Janet was produced by false vocal cords above the larynx and had the phraseology and vocabulary of a child. In a television interview for BBC Scotland, Janet was observed to gain attention by waving her hand and then putting her hand in front of her mouth while a claimed disembodied voice was heard. During the interview, both girls were asked the question, quote, "How does it feel to be haunted by a poltergeist?" Janet replied, "It's not haunted." And Margaret, in a hushed tone, interrupted, "Shut up." That's a pretty damning incident. It's very hard to believe something happened. Yes, there was the one singular, like, okay, she knew about the person who died. But at the same time, something like that, if you're in a smaller town, you go to your newspaper, you go to your library, you go to your town center, you can, those would be things of record that you could probably find.
Steve, she was 11.
At 11, I knew how to use a card catalog.
Yeah, but
You know
how
what I
would you
mean?
know that she would want to go and look up who died in her house?
How do you know she wouldn't?
I get it. I'm just saying.
I mean, if you just were like, I'm curious, like
Oh,
I
sure.
live in an old house. I'm curious what's happened here, and then you find out, that's potentially formative. Now I can't say whether or not she actually did that, but with all of the other evidence, being able to be easily thrown out, looking at other factors, in my opinion, you got to look at that one singular piece as the outlier.
Oh, sure. I'm right there with you, actually. If you were to sit down and ask me if I believe this case was real, I'm going to tell you that early aspects of the story were probably true.
Yeah.
I would say that there was probably some sort of anomalous events going on in the house, and I think that I don't want to call it a media frenzy because I don't think that was the proper term for it, but it definitely got some attention from, people, including the Warrens even showed up. So I think there was something going on there to an extent, and I feel like it was blown out of proportion after the fact. It is good to sell books to in a Hollywood movie. You can't, when people ask me, oh, how come, you don't write a book about your paranormal experiences? I'm like, do people want to read a book about me standing around for 6 hours waiting for equipment to work?
It's not exciting.
It's not exciting. So, I mean, you got to spice things up.
And especially, look, like we said about Ed and Lorraine, they were showmen.
No, they were. There was no question about
and
it.
They wouldn't do something unless it put them over.
Yeah.
To use a wrestling term. So
at least when Ed was alive.
right.
Yeah.
And that would have been during this.
Yes, of course.
So why else would they show up if it wasn't something that they
uninvited
could see?
at that.
Uninvited.
Yep, and they showed up for a day.
Yeah. I mean,
And now, don't get me wrong. You know as well as I do that investigators quabble all of the time. There is always a fuss between two investigators about, oh, I was here first, or this is my exclusive spot. So it doesn't surprise me that Playfair and Maurice ended up being like, leave. We were here first.
Right. But I feel like at that time that would have done nothing but elevate them up. So they would be.
Oh,
if you were at an investigation back in the day.
Oh yeah, and then Lorraine
and they showed up. You'd be like, absolutely, come
Yes.
do this, because that just makes you elevate your status.
Of course, I think there's something to the case. But do I believe that the girl was, I buy into some of the stuff that our skeptic was just talking about in the article I just read. What is that beeping noise?
I don't know. I heard it.
Do you hear a beeping noise?
I think it's this computer.
Is things going to blow?
No, I think no, we're not blowing.
Okay, that's good to know. I'm like, man, geez, the poltergeist was not too
I
thrilled
think
with
the
that.
Jed TV though is kind of slowing on me.
That's fair. I will say, just to kind of wrap things up as a whole, I would say if I was to sit down and try to determine what was the truth in the story, I think there were things going on there. But do I think that it was heightened after the fact? Yeah. You're an 11-year-old kid. You're getting a lot of attention from, the people. You might exaggerate things a little bit. And I'm not trying to discredit her, because the early stages where the mom walked in and moved the dresser and it moved again, I'll buy it. Because the mom was even protective after the situation ended. But I also want to know, why did it end? Most investigations I've been on in cases, they don't end until something is escorted out of the house, metaphysically. That includes both exorcism from a church, a psychic coming in and doing a cleansing, native ritual, whatever it might be, a metaphysical means to an end. Or in your case, in the scientific community, hey, your fish tank needs a new filter.
Right.
I use that as an exact reference to a case you were on.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, why did it just magically end? I never, in the research I have here for you, all it says is it just was over one day.
And I'll say this. I have seen that happen. There was a a very relatively famous case in the 70s in Orland Hills, Illinois, where there was extreme poltergeist activity, including flames that would come out of sockets from the walls and make 90-degree turns. That was witnessed by the fire department.
That's wild.
And it just stopped. One day, it just stopped. It's possible for it to just stop.
Oh, sure.
It's not common.
No.
By any means. But for me, that's not an entirely... That's the least discrediting thing out of all.
Oh, no, I'm right there with you. But in this case, it's like, well, after 2 years we've been investigating it, now the attention's dying down.
And you get, assuming that she was doing this, she would have been 13 at that point.
Yep.
This no longer becomes fun. It becomes boring. Moving
on to things.
I mean, that's the time that you get into the later grades. So that would be, in the U.S., that would be high school age. You'd be getting to. So, and you don't want to go into those as that's the ghost girl.
Yeah, I mean, I was the ghost guy growing up, so people used to call me Ghost Boy all the time.
Yeah, I mean, but that's not what the ideal way to go into high school. So,
no.
Would it make sense that if she, assuming she was causing all of this, just was like, this is boring, this is no longer helpful or advantageous to me, let's stop. I'm going to just stop this and just say, oh, it disappeared.
Now, I wouldn't be doing the show justice if I didn't ask Count. Do you think the Enfield poltergeist case, do you think it was real or hooey?
I mean, there's lots of variables here, Bob, but I'm going to go with the old-fashioned hooey.
Oh, look at that. Score for the skeptics today.
I haven't done a hooey in a while, so I'm going to go with a hooey this time.
Are you just going with that because you haven't done one in a while? Sorry, folks. I'm in pain. I got to stand up.
For the record, he did do hooey last week.
Did I do hooey last week?
Yeah.
But I'm doubling down.
Said there was no who. You said no. You said hooey to the Enfield horror.
I'm going to double down here. I mean, and again, I wasn't there, so I can't tell you at all.
What I would be interested to know is after the fact. Let's say, because I think the family still owned the house. If anything ever popped up and happened again,
right?
That's what I would be curious to know.
Yeah, and I've saw no. Nothing stating that anything ever did.
No. So, gentlemen, it was a pleasure having these conversations tonight. Panic thinks it's hooey. You think it's straight hooey.
This is absolutely hashtag hooey.
I'm going with plausible.
Oh, okay.
I'm going with early stages plausible, definitely hooey after a while.
There we go.
Okay.
So I'm going with there was something kicking around there that was definitely exaggerated.
Okay, I can accept that.
That's fair. It's interesting. I will always find it interesting that we had a magician on the case and a ventriloquist. Yes,
there were others that I didn't get into.
No, but the ventriloquist is the most interesting person to bring on a disembodied voices case. I would have never thought of that in a million years.
It's so
but
outside the box.
It makes total sense. Like Steve from when Steve was still a part of the Graveside Paranormal team, he was a hypnotist. And I remember being like, no, wait, that makes total sense. Stop. Yeah. Let's back this up a little bit. Yeah. Let's not skip over that. Your expertise is actually kind of brilliant in a case like this,
Yeah, I mean, and it's wild to me that you had the ventriloquist and multiple magicians investigating this, because I can't think of another case where that has happened, where magicians came in to investigate a haunting to this extent.
Next investigation I want to bring in a magician with me.
Yeah.
I want to now. I'm going to call Joe Diamond. He's a mentalist, but same concept.
Yeah.
And be like, hey, come with me and do this investigation because I want your 2 cents on it.
Yeah. I may call my buddy Luis and be like, hey man, I need you to come out with us.
Sounds good. Count, you got any closing words for the audience this evening as I'm standing here in pain?
Yeah, no, everybody continue on having a great summer solstice and don't believe all the hooey.
You know the summer solstice is way over at this point, right?
Well, I mean,
The wheel of time is moving closer to that fall equinox.
I just
man.
mean the summer
Don't you
in
dare
general,
talk about
man.
fall yet.
Yeah.
I'm saying we're the clock is ticking.
The veil is ticking.
The veil's back to thick. We're at thick level.
Double
this is
C.
like margarine
All right.
or marmalade.
Gotta love that thick veil.
All right, Steve, what's going on with you?
This Sunday at Pro Wrestling Action in Orlando, in Sanford, Florida, just outside of Orlando, Florida, I am taking on Mikey Spandex.
We don't like Mikey Spandex
We
here.
hate
Mikey Spandex smells bad,
He
everybody.
reeks.
He smells, he's an incompetent wrestler.
He smells of duty.
Yeah, we don't like him at Bob After Dark. Sorry, Mikey Spandex.
Can I
but
say duty on the radio?
you can say duty.
Okay.
You
he
can't
smells
use
of-
the word that it's
He smells
relating
of
to.
duty.
He's a bum.
Panic's never seen this guy wrestle a day in his life.
No, he's right. He's right. He's a bum. He's a bum who smells like duty.
My word.
And I'm taking him on in an anything goes match.
Are you going to hit him with a brick?
Hey, anything goes, brother.
That's what I'm getting
I'm
at.
gonna.
Are you going to use a cheese grater?
I'm gonna do the old Rikishi special and run him over with a car.
Yep. If you do not, you need to use a cheese grater.
I might do it. I might maybe some barbed wire.
Ooh.
Maybe.
Everything, including the kitchen sink, I think was the old terminology.
Everything, including the kitchen sink, my friend.
Yes.
It'll be a
Mikey Spandex. I'm sorry. I'm going to be reporting you're losing the next time Steve's in the studio with us.
Hey, and then at the end of the month, I will be in Richton Park on July 28th in Richton Park for Ileana Pro Wrestling. I will be defending my Rocket Pro heavyweight title at Ileana Pro that night. So
Who are you wrestling then?
It hasn't officially been announced, so I don't screw it. I'm wrestling Quinn Whittick.
I don't like Quinn Whittick. Sounds like he smells too.
Another bum.
Yeah, there we go. You just got a scoop on this one.
Scoop.
It hasn't been announced by the company. I'm announcing it here. Micheals versus Quinn Whittick for the RPW heavyweight title.
Quinn Whittick, man. You're in for it. All right, folks, remember you could go to ProWrestlingTees.com/Chicago Bear Hug for all of your Steve Micheals merch. Use discount code BAD10 at checkout for 10% off on your order. You can follow Steve on social media at Chicago Bear Hug, wherever you find social medias at. And of course, for me, the Bob After Dark merch store is up and available. BobAfterDark.com/shop or just BobAfterDark.com. Go to the store. I have all kinds of attire there for you to purchase.
You got that Bob After Dark mankini up.
There is a Bob After Dark booty shorts.
I'm wearing them now. You can't see I'm sitting. They're very
They're
comfy.
also pajama pants that I heard are incredibly comfortable that I designed myself.
Ooh.
I could say that I designed it myself. Thank you.
Did you make them?
No, I designed them.
Okay, good.
No, just design them. So yeah, you could go there for all of your merch needs. You can find me Bob After Dark on wherever you find social media.
I may have to do a collab with you to make an exclusive Steve Micheals Bob After Dark shirt.
I think that needs to be a thing.
Yeah, we'll
I
talk
like that.
after this.
I like that.
We'll
Can
make this happen.
we got to do like a test of strength, like character art, and have Count Panic be the referee.
Yeah, we'll do it.
Yeah, I think that's got to be
figure
the thing.
this out.
All right, guys, I'm gonna get out of here because my site is killing me. What's up, Count?
John, I think that you confirmed this with John. There are tank tops also available.
There is tank tops
He's got
available.
yeah.
Yep, there are tank tops available. Okay. I actually made a specific tank top just for John to purchase, which he hasn't purchased.
He's got to
yet.
purchase it.
All right. Anyway, folks, thank you for so much for watching and listening to another episode of Bob After Dark. On behalf of me and the crew, we just want to say goodnight to all of you. Mom, sweet dreams. Dad, wherever you are in the universe, I hope you're happy, comfortable doing whatever it is that you want to be doing. And the Tiff, no matter where you are in the world, I hope you have the sweetest dreams of them all. Good night, everybody. Remember, the two most important rules of Bob After Dark are not all who wander are lost, and as above, so below. Until next time.
Memoriam Development.